Right, so One Piece. If you've somehow never touched it, here's the shape of the thing. A manga that started back in 1997 has run past 1100 chapters, and after all that time still hasn't told us what its own treasure actually is. That's not a mistake. That's sort of the whole appeal. I've been chewing on these mysteries for years, and tonight I just want to wander through them with you. No big build-up, no dramatic reveal waiting at the end. Just the questions that don't have answers yet, taken slowly, one at a time. Some of these, the story is finally starting to crack open. Others have been sitting untouched since arcs most people have half forgotten. And a few, I reckon, we'll be arguing about long after the series ends. If you enjoy this sort of thing, subscribing helps more than you'd think. That's the only time I'll bring it up, so lie back and get cozy. There's no rush tonight. Let's start with the obvious one. The treasure at the end of the world that exactly one crew has ever laid eyes on. There's a detail here I still find funny after all these years. The most famous treasure in the history of the genre, the thing the entire series is named after. The object every pirate on the planet has spent their lives chasing, and we have never once seen it. Not a glimpse, not a corner of it poking out of a chest, nothing. Only one crew ever reached it. Goldie, Roger and his lot, right at the end of their voyage, sailed to the final island at the bottom of the Grand Line. And when Roger got there and saw what was waiting, he laughed, just laughed. Laughed so hard, apparently, that he named the whole island after it. Laugh-Tale. That's where the name comes from. The last island in the world is named after the sound a man made when he finally understood the joke. I love that. I've always loved that, because a laugh is such a strange reaction. You'd expect a man to go quiet, or to weep, or to stand there stunned at the size of what he'd found. Roger laughed, and the story has been dangling that reaction in front of us for decades, basically saying, go on then, work out what could possibly be funny about the greatest secret in the world. So what is it? That's the question, and it's the one every fan has a pet answer to. The most literal reading is the simplest one. It's treasure. Actual treasure. Gold, riches, the mountain of wealth you'd expect a pirate king to leave behind. And the reason I don't dismiss this outright is that Oda himself has said more than once in interviews that there really is a tangible physical thing at the end. He's been quite firm about it, actually. He didn't want people building it up into some purely symbolic idea and then feeling cheated. There's a real object. That's confirmed straight from the author's mouth, which for One Piece is about as solid as evidence gets. But nobody sensible thinks it's just money, because of what people say about it. At the big war years back when Whitebeard was dying, he did a very deliberate thing. With his last breath, in front of the entire world's press, he confirmed that the One Piece is real. He told everyone it exists, that it's out there waiting, and that whoever finds it will turn the world completely upside down. Now think about who's saying that. This is a man who was arguably the strongest pirate alive, a man with nothing left to prove, and no reason to lie as he's bleeding out. He didn't say, you'll be rich. He said the world will change. That's a different kind of treasure entirely. So the second big theory is that the One Piece isn't wealth, it's information. The complete, true history of the world. Everything the Void Century hid, all in one place, sitting on that final island, for anyone with the courage and the map to come and read it. Under this reading, the treasure is dangerous because knowledge is dangerous, because whoever holds the whole truth holds the power to unmake the lie the world's been running on for centuries. And honestly, that fits the laugh better than gold does. Roger wasn't laughing at a pile of jewels, he was laughing at the truth, at how absurd it was, or how ironic, or how the whole thing had been set up. We don't know why yet, but he understood something and it broke him into laughter. Reads a lot more like a revelation than a payday. The part that gives me chills, though, isn't the treasure at all. It's what Roger's crew did afterwards. They found it. They learned everything. The full history, the whole secret, Whatever's actually sitting on Laughtail, Roger and his crew took it all in, and then they went home and disbanded, quietly. Roger turned himself in and was executed. The rest of them scattered to the winds, and as far as we can tell, most of them just got on with their lives. Rayleigh, Roger's right hand, ended up working as a coating mechanic on a lawless island, keeping his head down for decades. They knew the biggest secret in the world, and they did nothing with it. Rayleigh's own explanation when the crew finally pressed on the subject was basically that they'd arrived too early, that Roger, for all his strength, wasn't the one the world had been waiting for. There was a piece missing, a person, a moment, something that hadn't arrived yet. So they laid it all down and waited for someone else to come along at the right time. Which is a wild thing to accept about yourself, if you think about it. To reach the summit of everything you've chased and go, no, this isn't mine to finish. I'm just here to leave the door open for whoever comes next. That's the thread that ties the One Piece to Luffy, of course. The whole series is quietly built on the idea that Roger was the wrong man at the right place, and someone else is the right man who simply had to be born a little later. Sort of like buying a ticket for a show that hasn't been cast yet. There's a quieter theory I've grown fond of, and it's the least dramatic of the lot, that the One Piece, whatever the physical object is bound up with something emotional. Some record of the people who came before, some message left by a friend, something that lands as a laugh precisely because it's warm rather than world-shaking. Oda's shown a real soft spot for that kind of ending, where the enormous mythic thing turns out to have a very human heart inside it. I wouldn't be surprised if the treasure that shakes the world also happens to be, underneath, a letter from one friend to another across 900 years. That's the kind of writer he is. What we can say for certain is embarrassingly little. It's real, it's physical, it's on Laughtail. Whitebeard says it'll upend everything. Roger laughed at it. His crew found it and walked away, and the map to reach it is scattered across 4 special stones hidden in the most dangerous corners of the world, which is a whole mystery of its own that we'll get to. The rest is guesswork. Very good guesswork in some cases, but guesswork all the same. And the strange thing is, I'm not even in a hurry to know anymore. There's something nice about a treasure that stays buried. The moment we see it, the moment the chest opens, the mystery is spent forever. For now, it gets to be anything. A mountain of gold, a history that topples empires, a joke only a dying king ever got to hear. Right now, it's all of those at once, and none of them. And that's a better state for it than any single answer would be. We'll get to the answers the world is desperate to hide though, which means we should probably talk about the 100 years they hid them in. Every history has gaps. Records get lost, buildings burn down, nobody bothered to write the boring bits. That's normal. What's happened in the world of One Piece is not normal. There is a 100-year stretch, ending about 8 centuries ago, that has simply been removed. Not lost, removed, deliberately. The history book skips straight over it, the way you'd cut a scene out of a film and splice the 2 ends together and hope nobody notices the join. Historians call it the Void Century, and the reason we know it was taken out rather than misplaced is that the people who took it out are still around, still in charge, and still extremely keen that nobody go digging. That's the world government. And their position on the Void Century isn't, we don't know what happened. Their position is that researching it is a crime, an actual serious come-and-get-you crime. You're not allowed to study those 100 years. You're not allowed to try to read the records that survived them. And if you get good enough at it to be a genuine threat, the government has shown more than once that it will erase an entire island of people to make the problem go away. The records that survived are the strangest part of it, and my favourite bit of world building in the whole series. They're called poneglyphs, enormous blocks of a peculiar reddish stone scattered across the world, absolutely indestructible. You cannot break them, cannot burn them, cannot chip them, and covered in an ancient script that almost nobody alive can read. Somebody, back during that missing century, clearly saw the erasure coming, So they carved the truth into the one material that couldn't be destroyed and hid the blocks in the most dangerous places on Earth, trusting that one day someone would come along, learn the language, and piece the story back together. It's a message in a bottle, basically, except the bottle is a 40-ton slab of unbreakable rock, and the sea it's been thrown into is 800 years wide. Reading them is the crime, by the way, not owning one. The stones themselves are so tough that some kingdoms have been sitting on one for generations without knowing what it is. The offence is understanding it, which tells you the government isn't afraid of the stones. It's afraid of the sentence, and there was one place, once, that could read them. O'Hara, an island of scholars, archaeologists, a great library built around a tree so big it had its own weather. These were not warriors. They were bookish people who devoted their lives to reconstructing lost history because they thought the truth mattered. They got close enough that their lead scholar, an old man called Clover, managed to get a line open to the world's leaders and started to explain what they'd found, that there had been a kingdom, an enormous and advanced one, that existed before the government and stood against the alliance that became it. He was building to the name. He was about to say the name of that lost kingdom out loud. He never got to. They shot him mid-sentence and called in the fleet. The whole island was wiped out. Almost everyone on O'Hara was killed. The scholars, the library, the tree, the lot turned to smoke in an afternoon, all to stop one old man finishing one sentence. That's the length the government will go to. And the reason any of this matters to the main story is that a single child survived O'Hara that day. A little girl who could already read the stones. And she grew up to be Nico Robin, the last archaeologist. Which is why a woman who mostly wants a quiet life keeps ending up at the centre of the biggest secrets in the world, whether she likes it or not. Now, what's shifted recently is worth pausing on, and it's a big deal for a mystery that spent 20-odd years being total darkness. We finally got some of the shape of it, not from a stone from a dying scientist. Vegapunk, the smartest man in the world, left behind a recorded message that got broadcast to the entire planet, and in it he confirmed the bones of what happened. There really was a great kingdom hundreds of years ago, far more advanced than anything that exists now. There really was a great war. On one side, that kingdom and a figure called Joy Boy. On the other, an alliance of 20 nations. The 21, the kingdom fell, and the winners spent the next century scrubbing it from history, then formed themselves into the world government and ruled ever after. So we've gone from we know nothing to we know the skeleton, which is progress. And this is the bit I keep coming back to, the skeleton raises more than it settles. Because consider what Vegapunk pointedly did not tell us. He didn't say the kingdom's name. Same blank Clover died reaching for, still blank. He didn't say what the two sides were actually fighting about. He described it, quite carefully, as a clash of ideals, as if the two sides simply wanted incompatible things for the world. But he wouldn't say which side was right, and he wouldn't say what those ideals were. He said if he explained further, he'd be guessing, and he refused to guess on the record. Very responsible of him. Deeply annoying for the rest of us. So the modern mystery of the Void Century isn't, did something happen? We know something happened. It's why. What did that lost kingdom believe that was so dangerous the winners couldn't just defeat it? They had to make sure nobody ever knew it had existed. You don't erase a century over a border dispute. You don't wipe an island of librarians off the map because they might reveal that a war was fought. People fight wars constantly in this world, and the government's fine putting those in the textbooks. Something about this particular truth is different. Something about it threatens the government not as an army, but as an idea, as if simply knowing what the old kingdom stood for would be enough to make people question why the current lot are in charge at all. That's the theory I lean towards anyway, that the Void Century isn't hidden because it's shameful, it's hidden because it's inspiring. Because somewhere in those 100 years is a version of the world that the people at the top decided nobody should be allowed to want. There's a lovely small detail I'll leave you with. The founding families of that 20-nation alliance didn't just win the war. They elevated themselves above everyone else and became what are now called the celestial dragons, the world nobles who live above the rest of humanity in every sense, treat commoners as barely people, and consider themselves closer to gods than to men. And their power, their whole claim to stand above the world, rests entirely on a version of history they wrote themselves, after burning the real one. Their throne is built on a deleted century. Take away the lie, and there's nothing holding them up. Which might be exactly why one of them refused to become a celestial dragon at all, turned around and walked home, carrying a secret that still hasn't stopped causing trouble 800 years later. But that's a thread for a bit further along. First, I want to talk about the man on the losing side, the one whose name keeps turning up, carved into stone, painted onto walls, whispered by giants, a man who died before any of us were born, and somehow still hasn't left the story. Some characters you meet properly. You get an introduction, a face, a voice, a whole arc where they walk around and do things. And then there's Joy Boy, who's been one of the most important people in the entire series for hundreds of chapters and has appeared on the page only as a silhouette. Yet he's been dead the whole time. He's been dead since before the story's grandparents were born, and he still won't leave. His name turns up everywhere once you know to look for it, carved into the ancient stones, spoken by giants who've kept a torch lit for him for centuries, written into an apology that sat unread at the bottom of the sea for 800 years. For most of the series, he was just that, a name. No context, no explanation, just this odd, almost childish name attached to something enormous and sad. Joy Boy. It sounds like a nickname a friend would give you. It does not sound like the name of a man an entire world government spent centuries trying to erase. What we've actually been told about him now is a fair bit, because the recent stretch of the story finally coughed up some answers. Joy Boy was born in that lost kingdom, roughly 900 years ago. He was, by the smartest man in the world's own account, the very first person ever to be called a pirate. Not a criminal, not a raider, a pirate in the way the series means it, which is something closer to a free person who refuses to be owned. He stood on the losing side of the Great War, and when he died, right at the end of that 100-year blackout, the war died with him. His side lost. The world we've been watching for 1,000 chapters is the world that was built on top of his defeat. So the whole series, underneath all the adventure and the daft jokes and the enormous fights, is quietly a story about a promise a dead man couldn't keep. And I mean that literally, because we know about at least one promise, and it's genuinely one of the most affecting things in the whole work. Down on Fishman Island, deep under the sea, there's one of those ancient stones, and unlike most of them which record cold history, this one is personal. It's an apology. Joy Boy, 8 centuries ago, wrote an apology to the princess of the merfolk of his day and left it carved in stone for whoever came next to find. He'd made her a promise, something to do with an enormous ancient ship called Noah, something that was meant to happen and didn't, some rescue or deliverance that fell through when his side lost the war and he ran out of time. He couldn't do the thing he'd sworn to do. So the last message he left the merfolk wasn't a battle plan or a warning. It was sorry. I'm sorry. Someone will come and finish this one day. Joy Boy said, I'm sorry I couldn't fulfill my promise. I find that unbearably lovely, honestly. The most feared name in the world, the man the government erased a century to bury. And the message he leaves behind is a bloke apologising to a friend for letting her down. That's the emotional engine of the whole thing, if you ask me. All the mythology is really wrapped around that. Now the myth, because this is where it stops being sad history and starts being properly strange. There is a legend associated with the giants of the land of Elbaf about a figure called Nika, the sun god, a warrior of liberation who, the stories say, would turn up wherever people were suffering under someone's boot, free them and, this is the important bit, make them laugh while he did it. Not a grim avenger, a joyful one, somebody who fought oppression with a grin on his face and left laughter behind him wherever he went. The enslaved and the downtrodden used to pray for Nika to come, believing he'd return someday was the thing that got them through. And the connection the story dropped on us reframed the entire series when it landed. Luffy's power, the rubber body. The thing we all assumed for 800 chapters was a simple, slightly silly devil fruit, is not a rubber fruit at all. It's the fruit of Nika, the sun god. Nika, the warrior of liberation in the giant's ancient legend. Luffy has been, without anyone realizing, the living return of the thing the enslaved prayed for. The government even knew they'd kept the true name of his power hidden for centuries, so afraid of what it represented that they classified the fruit under a lie. So Joy Boy and Nika are tangled together, and this is the mystery that's still properly open. Were they the same person? Was Joy Boy 900 years ago the man who carried this same power, this same laughing spirit of liberation, the first Nika, so to speak? Or is Joy Boy something more like a title, a role that the world keeps waiting for someone to fill again, the way you'd wait for a hero to be reborn? The story has strongly hinted that Luffy is, in some sense, the next Joy Boy. That Roger's crew reached the end and realised they'd arrived before this person had even returned. That the treasure has been sitting there, waiting for the one who'd carry the sun god's laugh back into the world. But we still don't actually know who the first one was. Not his real name, not his face, not the specifics of what he was fighting for. Beyond freedom, in some grand shape we can't quite see yet. He's a silhouette, a very warm, very sad silhouette, but a silhouette. There's one more piece of him still walking around, and it's my favourite, the enormous elephant. Zunesha, the mountain-sized creature that carries a whole country on its back and has been trudging across the seas for what seems like forever. That elephant knew Joy Boy, personally. They were comrades, back in the day, 800 years ago and more. When Luffy's power fully woke up, Zunesha heard something in the rhythm of it, an old heartbeat, a drum beat it recognised, and the ancient thing actually reacted with something like joy, because after all this time, it thought its old friend had finally come back. Imagine that, being so old and so alone that the only one who'd recognise you is an elephant the size of an island who's been walking the ocean for 1,000 years, waiting. There's a whole mystery to that elephant too, its own crime and its own sentence. And we'll sit with it near the end. For now, I just think it's the most quietly devastating detail in the series, that the last living thing to remember. Joy Boy isn't a person at all. So that's the man who lost. First pirate, first free person, keeper of a promise he couldn't keep, and possibly the original of a laugh that's still echoing around the world 9 centuries later, waiting for the right person to laugh it again. We don't know his name. We might never get it. And I've made a sort of peace with the idea that maybe we're not supposed to. That the point of Joy Boy was always the thing he stood for, rather than the man himself. Speaking of things standing for other things, there's a letter in some of these people's names, a single one, and the world is terrified of it. This one's my favourite kind of mystery, because it's been sitting in plain sight the entire time, and most people don't clock it until someone points it out. It's a single letter, one letter tucked into the middle of certain people's names, and the world is quietly, deeply afraid of it. Monkey D. Luffy. That's the full name of our hero? Not Monkey Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy. There's a D in there. And once you notice it in his name, you start noticing it everywhere. Gol D. Roger, the Pirate King, whose name the world got wrong for decades because everyone just heard Gold Roger and assumed it was a nickname about treasure. It wasn't. It was Gol D. Roger, and the D was always there, hiding in the mispronunciation. Portgas D. Ace, Marshall D. Teach, Trafalgar D. Waterloo, Monkey D. Dragon, and his father, Monkey D. Garp. The name keeps turning up, scattered across pirates and marines and revolutionaries who otherwise have nothing to do with each other, generation after generation. And the strangest part is that most of them have no idea what it means. It gets passed down through bloodlines, often without explanation, sometimes without the person even knowing they carry it. Luffy didn't know it stood for anything. Ace only half understood it. These people are walking around with a letter in their name that the world government considers dangerous, and they mostly treat it like a family quirk, which, when you think about it, is a lot like carrying something priceless in your pocket your whole life and never once being told what it's for. What we've been able to piece together about the D is still mostly shadow, and I want to be upfront about that. The clearest statement anyone's made is that the carriers of the D are the natural enemy of the gods. Now remember who the gods are in this world. The celestial dragons, the founding families who sit above everyone else and genuinely believe they're a cut above humanity. The D clan are described as their natural enemy. Not their rivals, not their opponents, their natural enemy. The way a predator is the natural enemy of a particular prey. As if the two things were made to stand against each other. As if the whole point of the D is to be the thing that eventually pulls the so-called gods back down to earth. There's a pattern the story keeps drawing our attention to, and it gives me a little shiver every time. The people who carry the D tend to smile when they die. Roger, at his execution, standing on the scaffold with the blades coming down, grinning, actually grinning, making a joke, kicking off the entire golden age of piracy with the last words he ever spoke. Others in the clan, at the worst moments of their lives, facing the end, have that same odd reaction, a smile, a refusal to be afraid of the thing everyone's supposed to be afraid of. It's like the D carries not just an enmity toward the powerful, but a specific relationship with death itself, a lack of fear of it, or maybe an understanding of it that the rest of the world doesn't have. There's a phrase that drifts through the series, said by a few different characters at heavy moments, that the will of D will rise again, that the D will kick up a storm. It's always spoken like a half-remembered prophecy, the kind of thing people say without quite knowing where they heard it. And the word that keeps attaching itself to the clan is inheritance. Will passed down like a torch. One person carries it as far as they can, and when they fall, someone else picks it up and carries it further. And the specifics of the person matter less than the fact that the flame keeps moving. Whitebeard banged on about this at the end, that a person's will, the thing they truly believed in, doesn't die with the body. It gets inherited, and the D seems to be the purest version of that idea. A will so old, it's been handed down for 8 centuries, and still hasn't gone out. The recent stretch of the story gave us a proper concrete clue, and it ties this whole thing back to where we started. One of the 20 kings who founded the world government, one of the winners, one of the people who was supposed to become a god, was secretly a member of the D clan. Nefertari D. Lily, the queen of a desert kingdom. She was there at the very beginning, at the founding, and she carried the enemy's name. And she's the one who refused the crown, turned around, never returned home, and whose mistakes scattered the poneglyphs across the world so they couldn't all be buried. So the D wasn't just on the losing side of that ancient war. It had someone on the inside of the winning side too, and that person committed the original act of defiance that everything since has grown out of. Which reframes the letter for me. It's not just the enemy of the powerful, it's the thing that refuses to let the story end the way the powerful want it to end. Every time the government thinks it's won, thinks it's buried the past for good, another D turns up, a pirate, a revolutionary, a marine with a conscience, and kicks up the storm all over again. We still don't know what the letter stands for, whether it's the initial of a lost surname, the remnant of some ancient royal line from that erased kingdom, a title, a promise, or something none of us have guessed. There are good theories that it's a name the old world used, or a mark left on a particular family, or the abbreviated form of a word in that ancient language on the stones. But the honest answer is that Ode has kept this one right in the vault. Of all the mysteries, this might be the one he's protected most carefully, precisely because it's the smallest and the most central. A single letter that somehow contains the entire war between the free and the powerful. I've stopped needing it decoded, if I'm honest. There's something right about the fact that the most important name in the world is just an initial, a blank you're meant to fill in yourself. The gods have their long titles and their bloodlines and their endless list of ancestors, and the people who oppose them have one letter and a habit of smiling at the worst possible moment. That contrast tells you almost everything, without a single word of explanation. But if you want the person, the whole letter is really pointed at. The actual god sitting at the top of the world, that the D clan exists to bring down. Then we should talk about the empty chair, and the figure who's been sitting in it all along. There's a room at the very top of the world, right at the peak of the Holy Land, where the so-called gods live. In the oldest castle, there's a throne. And the official line, the thing every world leader is taught and every history book records, is that the throne is empty. It has always been empty. It is a symbol, a seat left vacant on purpose, to represent the idea that no single person rules the world, that the government is a partnership of equals and nobody sits above the rest. That's the story. It is a complete lie, and we found that out in one of the quietest, most chilling scenes in the whole series. Because the throne isn't empty. Someone sits in it. Someone has been sitting in it, in secret the entire time. A figure the world leaders themselves bow to. A person above the people everyone assumed were at the top. Their name is Imu. And for a long time that was all we had. A silhouette on a chair that wasn't supposed to be occupied, unsettling hidden eyes, and the horrifying realization that every powerful person we'd met for 1,000 chapters had someone standing over them the whole time. The recent stretch of the story has pulled the curtain back a fair way, and honestly, it's raised the hair on my arms more than once. So let me lay out what we now know, because it's a lot, and then get to the part that's still pure darkness. We know a name now, Nerona Imu, and we know the thing that recontextualizes everything. Imu was one of the original 20, one of the 20 kings who won that ancient war and founded the world government 800 years ago, which means Imu is that old too, 8 centuries at least. This is not a descendant of the founders, not an heir carrying on a dynasty. This is one of the actual founders, the same individual, still alive, still on the throne, having outlived every empire and every generation that came after. Which is an odd thing to get your head round. The person ruling the world today personally fought in the war that made the world. They remember it, they were there, and there's a thread that ties Imu back to something we've already touched. Imu has a connection, a deep, unexplained, slightly obsessive one, to Nefertari Lily, the queen who carried the enemy's letter, refused to become a god, and scattered the truth across the world. When a descendant of Lily's line came to the Holy Land, generations later, and started asking questions about what happened to her, Imu appeared. Personally. Broke cover for the first time in centuries over the mention of that one name. And it later came out that Emu keeps a portrait of Lily in the castle. Still, after 800 years, despite the fact that Lily's the one who caused all the trouble in the first place. That has fed one of the eeriest theories going, which is that Emu isn't a separate person from Lily at all. That when Lily vanished on her way home all those centuries ago, she left the Holy Land and simply never arrived. Something happened to her. That Emu took her, or took her body, or became her. And the reason Lily never made it home is that she stopped being Lily somewhere along the road. It would explain the portrait. It would explain the fixation. Whether it's true, I've no idea, and the story's being very careful not to confirm it. But it's the kind of theory that once it's in your head, you can't quite shake it. What Emu can actually do has come into focus recently, and it's monstrous. This is not a frail old ruler propped up by guards. Emu personally wiped an entire kingdom off the map. A whole country, the island of Lulusia, gone in a moment, erased using what appears to be one of the ancient weapons we'll talk about shortly. Fueled by a strange new energy source, Emu grants power to others too. The ability to hand the world's enforcers their monstrous transformations seems to flow from Emu directly. And there's a genuinely horrible trick where Emu can reach into someone else's body and take it over, wear it like a coat. At the God Valley incident, 38 years ago, Emu did not appear, and there is no canon evidence of them possessing an elder or using any reversing power to twist a legendary pirate into a demon. More recently, the same thing happened to a young warrior mid-battle. Her old memories started coming back, and Emu simply reached down the connection and took the wheel. And when Emu finally showed up in person at the Land of the Giants, in the current stretch of the story, it was the stuff of nightmares. Long, twisted horns, a devilish tail, a presence so overwhelming that the buildings and the landscape around them seemed to come alive with laughing, leering faces, reality itself bending under the weight of it. We still haven't seen the full transformation clearly. It's been kept a silhouette, a vast yokai shape that dwarfs everything around it, but the glimpses are enough to tell you this is something well past human. A small thing I can't stop thinking about. Those spiral eyes. Emu's irises are made up of multiple concentric rings. And there's exactly one other thing in the whole series with eyes like that. The ancient elephant, Zunesha, the one that knew Joy Boy. Two of the oldest things in the world, on opposite sides of everything, sharing the same strange eyes. Nobody's explained that yet. It might mean nothing. It might mean everything. That's One Piece for you. A tiny visual rhyme dropped hundreds of chapters apart that could turn out to be the key to the whole thing, or just a coincidence, and you won't know which until the very end. Now for all that, for the name, the age, the powers, the Lily connection, the core of Emu is still completely dark, and it's the good kind of dark. We don't know how a person stays alive and in power for 8 centuries. We don't know what Emu actually is underneath the transformation, devil fruit, curse, some remnant of the old kingdom's science, something else entirely. We don't know the one thing that actually matters, which is what Emu wants. Why keep the world locked in this shape for 800 years? Why erase the past so completely and guard it so viciously? What is Emu so afraid of coming back that they'd wipe out islands and rewrite centuries to keep it buried? And there's the fact that Emu personally knew Joy Boy. Knew him, as in met him, faced him, was there for the war and its ending. Emu is one of the few people alive who could simply tell us who Joy Boy was and what the fight was really about. And Emu is the one person in the world with the strongest possible reason never to say a word. That's what makes this the most loaded mystery in the series, I think. Every other secret is a fact waiting to be uncovered. Emu is a witness who's still breathing, still ruling, still choosing silence 800 years on. The answer to everything is sitting on that throne. It just has no intention of talking. Right, enough of the ruler. Let's talk about the weapons that could unmake the world, because emus already got their hands on at least one of them. Now let's talk about the 3 things that can end the world. And I mean that fairly literally. These are described in universe as weapons capable of destroying the world itself, or at least reshaping it so completely that destroy is close enough. They're named after gods: Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus. And for most of the series, they were just that. 3 names, dropped in a hushed tone. The sort of thing a scholar mentions and then immediately regrets mentioning. The reason they matter is that they're not modern. They're leftovers. They were built or born back during that erased century, and they were used in the Great War, which means the world has already seen what they can do once, and the people at the top have spent 800 years making very sure it doesn't happen again. Let's take them one at a time because they're each a different flavour of terrifying. Pluton is the one that's easiest to picture, because it's a ship, an enormous ancient warship, said to be the most destructive vessel ever built, capable of levelling an entire island with a single volley. One shot, one island, gone. The blueprints for Pluton survived the centuries, passed down in secret by the shipwrights of a particular city, handed craftsman to craftsman across generations with the understanding that this knowledge existed so that if the weapon was ever revived, someone would know how to build a counter to it. That's a heavy thing to inherit. The instructions for building Doomsday, kept only so you could stop Doomsday. In the end, one of our own crew, Frankie, ended up holding those blueprints, and he chose to burn them rather than let anyone use them, which was a lovely character moment and also means the plans are gone now, though the ship itself is still out there somewhere, buried, waiting. Wano's been hinted as its resting place. We'll see. Poseidon is the one that broke my heart a little, because it isn't a machine at all, it's a person. Poseidon is a title that passes, very rarely, to a mermaid born once every few centuries, with the power to command the sea kings. Those colossal sea monsters, big as islands, that can sink fleets without noticing. Imagine the largest, most destructive creatures in the ocean, and imagine a single quiet girl who can simply ask them to do things, and they will. That's Poseidon. And in the current era, that girl is Shirahoshi, a soft, timid, enormous mermaid princess who cries at everything and has absolutely no idea what to do with the fact that she's a weapon of mass destruction. She doesn't want to be. That's rather the point of her. The most dangerous thing in the sea is a gentle girl who'd never dream of hurting anyone, which is either deeply reassuring or deeply worrying, depending on who gets to her first. This is the weapon that ties back to Joy Boy's old broken promise, the one about the ancient ship and the merfolk, but I'll not spoil the shape of that. We'll come back round to it at the end. Then there's Uranus, and Uranus is the one that, until recently, was almost totally blank. Pluton we could picture, Poseidon we'd met, but Uranus was just a name, with nothing attached. That's changed, and not in a comforting way. Because when Immu erased that entire kingdom off the map, a whole island, wiped out in an instant from the Holy Land at the top of the world, the strong fan theory is that we were watching Uranus in action. Whatever it is, Immu already has it. The people at the very top of the world aren't hunting for the ancient weapons. They're sitting on at least one of them, and they've just demonstrated a willingness to use it on a populated country to test whether it still works. There's a new wrinkle here too, and it's a good one. The weapon that destroyed that kingdom seems to have needed fuel, a strange, enormously powerful energy source that had recently been developed by the world's greatest scientist and then fell into the wrong hands, a little sun in a bottle essentially, which raises the unsettling possibility that these ancient weapons aren't self-contained, that they've been dormant partly because nobody had the power to run them, and now, thanks to modern science accidentally handing the top of the world a fuel source, the oldest weapons in existence have been switched back on for the first time in 8 centuries. That's the through line that makes all three of them matter for the ending. The world of One Piece is very slowly sinking. The sea is rising, land is going under, and it's been quietly established that this isn't natural. It's the long aftermath of these weapons being used in the ancient war. The world we're looking at is already the wreckage of the last time someone fired these things. And now they're back in play. I'll say more on the drowning world further along, because it deserves its own quiet moment, but keep it in the back of your mind. The weapons and the sinking are the same story told from two ends. What I find most interesting, stepping back, is the choice of names. Pluton, Poseidon, Uranus, god of the underworld, god of the sea, god of the sky, death below, the ocean between, and the heavens above. 3 domains. It's almost too tidy, and Oda doesn't usually do things by accident, so a lot of people reckon the naming is a clue in itself, that the 3 weapons together were meant to give someone dominion over the whole world, top to bottom, and that whoever assembled all 3 would hold a kind of total power. The current rulers are desperate to prevent anyone else reaching. We don't know who made them. We don't know if the old kingdom built them to defend itself, or if they were turned against it. We know Pluton sleeps deep beneath Mount Fuji in Wano, but we don't know what Uranus even looks like, or what happens the day someone gathers all 3. What we do know is that one of them is already awake, in the hands of the one person in the world, with 800 years of reasons to use it, though which weapon and who exactly holds it remains unconfirmed. Which is not, on balance, where you'd want the god of the sky to end up. Speaking of people who shouldn't have the power they've got, let's talk about the man who broke the one rule this world absolutely does not let you break. I want to talk about Blackbeard, and I want to start by pointing out how badly he fooled all of us. When he first turned up, he was a joke. A big, gap-toothed, cherry pie-eating slob in a bar, laughing too loud, going on about how a man's dreams never die. He felt like a one-scene gag character. You'd have bet money he'd never matter. He now sits among the 4 most powerful pirates alive, has toppled a legend, and is arguably the single most dangerous person in the story after the Thing on the throne. So much for the pie guy, and the reason he's dangerous isn't just strength. It's that he is, as far as anyone can tell, impossible. The rule he broke is a simple one. In this world, you eat 1 devil fruit and that's it. 1 power forever. Try to eat a second, and your body can't take it. You die, messily. It's presented as an ironclad law of nature, confirmed by the government's own agents. No exceptions, no loopholes. 1 person, 1 power. Nearly every single character in over 1,000 chapters obeys this. Except Blackbeard has 2. He carries the power of darkness, a logia, the ability to become and control darkness itself, with the nasty added trick of cancelling other people's powers on touch. And he carries the power of the tremors, the strongest paramecia power in the world, the one that can crack the very air and generate earthquakes, which he took from Whitebeard's corpse after the old man's death in one of the coldest scenes in the series. 2 fruits, 2 powers, in 1 body, something no one else has ever managed to survive. Nobody knows how. That's the mystery, and it's a great one, because it's been foreshadowed since almost his first proper appearance, without ever being explained. The hints have been piling up for years, and they're wonderfully strange. Way back, one of Whitebeard's top men remarked that Blackbeard has an unusual body, not a metaphor, a genuine physical oddity that set him apart. When Luffy and Zoro first crossed paths with him together, before anyone knew who he was, they both came away with the same odd impression, that he wasn't quite one person. They referred to him as they, plural, as if they could sense more than one presence packed into the same man. And there's a small creepy detail fans have chewed on forever. Blackbeard doesn't sleep. Ever. It's been stated flat out. The man never sleeps. Put those together and you get the theory that's dominated the conversation for years. That there's more than one of him in there. That his body somehow houses multiple souls, multiple wills, and the reason he never sleeps is that one of them is always awake while the others rest. The reason he can hold 2 fruits is that there's more than one occupant to hold them. Some people take it further and reckon he has a secret third power on top of the 2 we've seen, a hidden mythical zone possibly modelled on Cerberus, the 3-headed hound that guards the underworld, which would be very on the nose, given his flag. Blackbeard's Jolly Roger, unlike everyone else's, has 3 skulls on it. 3. He's been flying the answer over his own ship the entire time, if that theory holds. And the recent chunk of the story handed us the piece that might tie it all together: his blood. It turns out Blackbeard comes from a very particular lineage. His family background remains largely unknown, with only vague hints that he may come from an old, possibly cursed sort of line. But nothing concrete about his father or any ancient figure has ever been revealed. So Blackbeard isn't a random freak of nature. His strangeness runs in the family. Whatever lets him do the impossible, he was likely born with it, carried down through a bloodline that's been odd for a very, very long time. That reframes him completely. He's not a man who found a loophole. He's a man who is the loophole by birth. There's a lovely idea threaded through all this that comes from the scientists' big broadcast. The notion that devil fruits aren't just random powers, they're the physical shape of human dreams. The forms people have always wished they could take. If that's true, then a body that can hold multiple fruits might be a body that can hold multiple dreams, multiple wills, all at once. And there's something fitting, almost poetic, about that belonging to Blackbeard specifically, because the one thing he said and meant from that very first bar scene is that a man's dreams never die. He's built his whole self around dreams and ambition, and taking what he wants. Maybe his body simply took him at his word. His actual ambition, by the way, is now clear, and it's enormous. He doesn't want to be the pirate king in the treasure hunting sense. He wants to be the king of the world, to sit above everything. It's an ambition all his own, and Blackbeard's picked it up and carried it forward, which makes him a genuine dark mirror of our hero, another man chasing an impossible dream and refusing to let it die. The one thing working against him, and I find this a nice bit of tension to sit with, is a line Whitebeard spoke with his dying breath, that Teach is not the man, not the one the world's been waiting for. Roger, remember, laid his treasure down because he'd arrived too early, waiting for someone specific to be born. Whitebeard, who knew Roger, looked at Blackbeard and said plainly, "It's not you." So we've got a man who's broken every rule, gathered impossible power, and set his sights on the throne of the world, and hanging over him the quiet certainty of a dead legend that he's chasing something that was never meant to be his. Whether that's true, or whether it's the sort of thing the old always say about the ambitious young, we'll find out. He's the exception that proves the world has rules, basically, and the fact that he exists tells you those rules were always more bendable than the government wanted anyone to know. Which brings up a fair question, actually. Where do these powers even come from in the first place? Nobody really knows. So let's wonder about that for a bit. Something here is easy to take for granted after 1,000 chapters of it. Nobody in this world actually knows where the powers come from. The devil fruits, the strange, swirly, foul-tasting fruits that give a person a superhuman ability at the cost of ever being able to swim again, are just there. They exist. People eat them, gain a power, pay the price, and get on with their lives. And almost no one stops to ask the obvious question: who made these? Where did they come from? Why does eating one make the sea itself reject you? I love a mystery that's hiding inside something everyone treats as ordinary. And this is the biggest of those in the whole series. Let's start with what we can observe, because the mechanics alone are wonderfully odd. Every fruit gives exactly one power, and each power is unique. There's only one of any given fruit in the world at a time. But the strange part comes next. When the person who ate one dies, the power doesn't die with them. The fruit reincarnates. It reappears somewhere in the world inside an ordinary piece of fruit. a random apple or pear on some tree or market stall, suddenly and secretly transformed into the swirly cursed version, waiting for the next person to come along and bite into it by accident. Nobody controls this. Nobody chooses where it lands. The power just insists on continuing to exist, hopping from body to body down the centuries, refusing to leave the world. That's not how an object behaves. That's how a will behaves. Which lines up with the best theory we've got, the one the world's greatest scientist floated before he died. He suggested that the devil fruits are the physical shape of humanity's dreams, the forms people have always, deep down, wished they could take. The dream of flying, the dream of being fire or ice or made of something no blade could cut, the dream of turning into a beast or stretching like rubber or stopping time. Under this idea, the fruits aren't random at all. They're a catalogue of every what if the human heart has ever whispered, made real and scattered across the world for people to stumble into. It's a genuinely beautiful thought. It also doesn't answer the actual question, which is, dreams don't just condense into edible objects on their own. Someone or something turned all that wishing into fruit, and we have no idea who. There are darker corners to this too. People have tried to manufacture the powers artificially, and the results are grim. A whole underground effort to mass-produce fake zone fruits, cooked up from a particular substance, to build armies of artificial power users. Most of them fail horribly. The ones that work produce something warped and sad, a hollow copy of the real thing. The lesson seems to be that the genuine fruits carry something the fakes never can, some spark that can't be reverse engineered in a lab, no matter how clever you are. The fake versions are just chemistry. The real ones have a soul in them, near enough, and nobody knows where the soul comes from. Then there's the awakening, which is the part that tips the whole subject from strange into slightly frightening. A devil fruit, pushed far enough, mastered deeply enough, can awaken, and an awakened fruit stops being a tool you use and starts being something with a will of its own. Awakened beast fruits, in particular, have been shown to almost drive their owners, giving them instincts and even a personality that isn't quite the person's own. Which loops right back to Luffy, actually. His fruit, the one we now know as the Sun God's, seems less like a power he owns and more like a spirit he's partnered with. It has a rhythm, it has a mood. When it fully woke up, it started doing things Luffy wasn't consciously choosing. Cartoon things, joyful things, as if the fruit itself had a sense of humour. If the fruits really are dreams made flesh, then an awakened fruit might be a dream that's woken up and remembered it used to be alive. And underneath all of it sits the oldest, simplest question, the one a child would ask and no scholar can answer. Why does the sea hate them? The moment you eat a devil fruit, the ocean turns on you, fall in, and you sink like a stone, powerless, drowning. The sea, which covers most of this world and is practically a character in its own right, treats fruit eaters as its enemy. It's why they're called devil fruits in the first place, the old belief that eating one puts a devil in you that the sea wants to reclaim. There's a real hint buried in there that the powers and the ocean are two halves of some ancient opposition we don't understand yet. That the fruits came from somewhere the sea remembers and resents. Blackbeard's darkness, notably, is described as the power closest to the sea's own nature, which is possibly why it can cancel the others. A small clue that the whole system has a logic to it we're only seeing the edges of. The government, for its part, seems very interested in keeping people from thinking about this too hard. There's been a strong suggestion that the fruits, their origin, and the erased century are all tangled together. That if you fully understood where the powers came from, you'd understand something the world's rulers would rather you didn't. Which is the same shape as every other secret in this series, isn't it? Pull any thread far enough and it leads back to those 100 deleted years, and the people who've spent 8 centuries guarding the hole where the truth used to be. So the next time someone in the series bites into a swirly fruit and gains the power to turn into a giraffe or control gravity, remember that it's not a game mechanic. It's a piece of a mystery nobody solved, a dream that reincarnated, a soul that hops bodies, a gift the sea itself is trying to take back. We just don't know who's been handing them out or why, and I'd put decent money on the answer being older and stranger than anyone's guessed. Now, from the strange science of powers to something much more like a ghost story. Let's go sit in the fog for a while. There's a name that turns up in the odd corners of this world, and it's one you might recognise from our world too. Davy Jones. In our sailors' folklore, Davy Jones is death at sea. His locker is the bottom of the ocean, where drowned men and sunk ships end up. It's an old, spooky bit of maritime superstition, the kind of thing sailors have muttered for centuries. And One Piece, being a pirate story to its bones, took that name and quietly built something real out of it. For most of the series, Davy Jones was barely there. There's a game pirates play called the Davy Backfight, a mad, cheerful contest where crews gamble their own members against each other, and if you lose, your crewmate joins the winning ship. It's named after him. There was a passing legend of a pirate so long ago that he'd sunk into myth. That was about it. A flavour detail, set dressing. The recent stretch of the story pulled him out of the background and made him matter, and I don't think we've begun to feel the full weight of it yet. Because it turns out there really was a Davy D. Jones. Note the letter. He's one of the clan, and he's the ancestor of a whole cursed bloodline. The line that leads down to that legendary pirate we've been circling and, through him, to Blackbeard. This isn't a game's namesake. This is a founder, a source, someone the family curse and the strange bodies all trace back to. One detail made me sit up. The figure on the throne, the one who's 800 years old and personally knew Joy Boy, also personally knew Davy Jones, knew him, which places Davy Jones back in the deepest past, in the era of the erased century, standing among the handful of people who were actually there when the world was made. So the sailor's bogeyman, the personification of death at the bottom of the sea, turns out to have been a real man at the dawn of everything, whose blood is still causing trouble in the present day. We don't know what he did. We don't know why the world remembered his name as a curse. But you don't become the folklore of death itself by being a minor player. Something happened with that man, back in the dark, and the series has only just started pointing at it. Now, let me take you somewhere foggy, because there's an old dangling thread that I've always suspected is connected, and the atmosphere alone makes it perfect for a night like this. There's a region of the sea called the Florian Triangle, a permanent bank of fog, thick and grey, that never lifts. Ships sail in and are never seen again. The ones that are found drift out empty, crew gone, no sign of a struggle, just an abandoned vessel wandering out of the mist. It's the local version of the Bermuda Triangle, and the merfolk and sailors give it the same wide berth you'd give any cursed water. Our crew passed through it years ago, and it's where they found poor Brooke, a living skeleton who'd been drifting alone in that fog for around half a century, kept walking only by a devil fruit, so lonely he'd nearly forgotten how to speak. The fog does that. It swallows people and time both, but the bit that's haunted readers ever since has never been explained. As the crew sailed out of the triangle, leaving that whole grim adventure behind them, they glanced back into the mist and saw shapes. Enormous shapes, figures so vast that their own ship, and their ship at the time was carrying a structure the size of a small castle, looked like a toy beside them. Towering silhouettes, standing or moving in the fog, there and then gone. The crew went quiet. Nobody could say what they were. Somebody compared them to the Umibozu, the giant sea spectres of old sailors' tales, the ones that rise out of calm water on a still night and drag ships under for no reason anyone can name. And then the story just moved on, left them there, gigantic unexplained beings in the permanent fog, glimpsed once over 1,000 chapters ago and never mentioned again. I don't think they're nothing. Oda doesn't usually spend a full dramatic panel on giant mysterious figures for a throwaway. The theories run in a few directions that they're ancient creatures, cousins of the mountain-sized elephant we keep coming back to, remnants of a world that had far larger things walking around in it, that they're tied to the Davy Jones law, the literal monsters at the bottom where drowned ships go, that they're some guardian or graveyard from the old century, hidden in fog precisely because fog is where you hide the things, too big and too old to explain. Maybe they're none of those. Maybe they really are just the story's version of the umibosu, a bit of pure folklore dropped in for atmosphere, never meant to pay off. But I've always liked that they're still out there, in a series obsessed with revealing things, with cracking open its secrets one by one. The Florian Triangle is a patch of the map the story has simply refused to look at again. Whatever's standing in that fog has been standing there, patient and enormous and unbothered for the entire run of the series. Waiting maybe, or maybe just existing, the way old things do, with no interest in whether we ever come back to look. There's something restful about a mystery, that big being left alone. Not everything needs solving. Some things are better as a shape in the fog. From folklore in the water, though, let's look up. Because one of the strangest threads in the whole series has been sitting quietly on the moon this entire time. This is the one I always say for people who think they know One Piece. Because even long-time readers sometimes forget it's there. The series has been quietly telling us for years that the story might not have started on this world at all. It might have started on the moon. Let me back up, because the way this thread got planted is genuinely funny. Years ago, there was a villain called Enel, a man who thought he was a god, ruled a floating island in the sky, got thoroughly walloped by Luffy, and then, humiliated, climbed into a great golden ark and launched himself off the edge of the world toward the moon. Everyone assumed that was just a cheeky way to write him out. Off you go, mad lightning man, enjoy space. And then Oda did this odd thing. He told the rest of Enel's story in the margins, in little wordless cover illustrations tucked into the corner of unrelated chapters. Almost nobody was paying attention. It read like a bonus, a side gag. Except in those margins, Enel reached the moon and found a city. A ruined, ancient, abandoned city, up there on the moon, that had clearly once been home to a whole civilization. And in that dead city he found machines, robots, old dormant automata, powered down and gathering dust, which flickered back to life when he arrived and started following him about. A cover story throwaway showed us the ruins of a lost people and their sleeping machines, sitting on the moon, waiting. And then it dropped the real bomb in pictures, with barely a word, that the people of the moon had run out of resources long ago and come down to the world below in search of a new home, that we, or at least some of the people in this world, might have come from up there. For years that felt like a fun, disconnected bit of lore. Neat that didn't touch the main story. It doesn't feel disconnected anymore. Because two things have happened since that make the moon look less like a footnote and more like a foundation. The first is the Lunarians. There's a race in this world, nearly wiped out now, hunted to the brink by the government, called the Lunarians. The name is right there, Moon People. We've properly met one, a fearsome warrior called King, and he's extraordinary. Winged, able to summon fire across his own back, with skin so tough that ordinary attacks simply don't land. His people once lived somewhere high and close to the sky, and the world's rulers decided they were too dangerous or too valuable to leave alone and set about exterminating them. A winged, fireproof race, all but erased, with a name that means moon. You don't call a people the Lunarians by accident. And the second thing is the robot. On the scientist island, at the very cutting edge of modern technology, there sat an enormous ancient machine that everyone assumed was just a curious relic. A giant iron figure, powered down for centuries, that the world's greatest inventor kept around without fully understanding. During the recent upheaval, it woke up. And when it woke, we learned it wasn't a modern build at all. It was hundreds of years old, a survivor from that same lost kingdom of the erased century, still faithful, still carrying out an old order, moving and even speaking after 8 centuries asleep. An ancient robot from the Old Kingdom, functionally identical in spirit to the sleeping machines NL found in the ruins on the moon. Do you see the shape it makes when you put those 3 things side by side? A dead civilization on the moon that built robots and then came down to the world. A near-extinct race called the Lunarians, winged and made of fire. And the lost, advanced kingdom of the Void Century, the one with technology far beyond anything that exists today, which also built robots that still work. The obvious, thrilling, slightly mad theory is that they're all the same story, that the ancient kingdom's impossible technology, the thing that made it advanced enough to threaten the whole world, came from the moon, that the old kingdom was founded or seeded by the people who came down from up there, that the reason it was so far ahead of everyone else is that it wasn't from here. It would explain the robots being alike. It would explain a race named for the moon being treated as a special threat worth exterminating. It might even reframe the whole war, not just a fight between kingdoms, but a fight involving the last inheritors of a technology and a lineage that fell out of the sky. I want to be careful here, because this is the thread where the fandom's imagination runs hottest and the confirmed facts are thinnest. What's actually confirmed is modest. There was a civilization on the moon, its descendants came down. There's a race called the Lunarians, and there's an ancient working robot from the Lost Kingdom. The line connecting all of that into one grand history is still theory. Oda's laid the dots out with obvious care, across hundreds of chapters and multiple arcs, but he hasn't drawn the line himself yet. And that's exactly why I love it as a thing to drift off to. It's the most cosmic the series ever gets, a pirate story that quietly looks up from the ocean and points at the moon and says, that's where it might have all begun. Whether or not the full picture ever gets confirmed, there's something wonderful about the fact that the answer to the oldest mystery in a story about the sea might be sitting in the sky, in a dead city, watched over by patient old machines that have already waited longer than any of us can imagine and seem entirely content to wait a while longer. Right, back down to the water and back to a friendlier face. Possibly the friendliest mystery in the entire world, if a mystery can be friendly. The man who gave Luffy his hat. Everybody loves Shanks. That's the first thing to understand about him. He's warm, he's easy, he laughs a lot and drinks a lot, and gave up an arm to save a kid he'd known for a year. He's the man who put the straw hat on Luffy's head in the very first chapter and told him to give it back one day when he'd become a great pirate. He is on the surface the most straightforward good bloke in the entire series. He is also, when you actually stack up what he does, one of its deepest and most unsettling question marks. And the gap between how simple he seems and how strange his behaviour is might be the biggest gap of that kind in the whole story. Start with the basics. Shanks was there at the end. As a boy, he served as an apprentice on the ship of the pirate king himself, until he and Buggy stayed behind near the end of that final voyage. He was present, young but present, for the reign that ended with the king's execution, which means Shanks has been standing near the centre of everything since before the story even began. He grew up at the king's side, and then he grew into one of the 4 strongest pirates in the world in his own right, a man so respected that his mere arrival can stop a war. That actually happened, by the way, and it's worth dwelling on. At the Great War years ago, with the whole thing spiralling toward total slaughter, Shanks simply showed up and asked everyone to stop, and they did. Marines and pirates alike, mid-battle, put their weapons down, because Shanks asked, not because he threatened them, because of who he is. That's a strange amount of soft power for a pirate to have. Pirates aren't supposed to be able to end wars by walking in and being reasonable. But there's a behaviour that's kept me up, in the nicest way. Shanks, an emperor, a wanted pirate, one of the most hunted men on the seas, walked into the Holy Land at the top of the world, the most secure place there is, and had a private audience with the 5 elders, the world's shadow rulers, the ones just below the thing on the throne. He strolled in, sat down, and had a chat with them about a certain pirate, and then walked back out again, unharmed, unhunted, apparently on cordial terms. You cannot overstate how bizarre that is. These are the people who erase islands to keep secrets, and a world noble gets a friendly meeting and a safe exit. Why? What is Shanks to them that he can do that? The recent stretch of the story gave us a piece of the answer, and it recoloured him completely. Shanks has a twin brother, and the two of them are the sons of a high-ranking celestial dragon, one of the elite holy knights who serve the throne directly. Shanks has the blood of the so-called gods in his veins. He was born into the very family that sits at the top of the world, the enforcers of the whole rotten order, which suddenly explains rather a lot about why he can walk into that castle and out again. And it raises about 10 new questions for everyone it answers. Because how does a son of the ruling class end up an apprentice on the Pirate King's ship, sworn to the pirate's dream of freedom, standing against everything his bloodline stands for? That's a whole hidden story we've barely glimpsed. And through all of it, the thing we still don't have is the one that matters. What does Shanks actually want? Because he's not idle. In the final stretch of the story, Shanks is on the move, actively hunting for the great treasure himself, right now, no longer content to sit back. This is the man who, when he met a young Luffy, seemed perfectly happy to pass the torch and let the boy carry the dream forward. And yet here he is, chasing the prize with real urgency, as if there's a clock running that only he can see. Some fans read his goal as noble, that he wants to reach the treasure and the truth in order to end this era of pirates cleanly, to stop the coming catastrophe, to close the book gently. Others read something more ambiguous in him, a man playing a game so long and so quiet that we can't yet tell which side of it he's on. There was a whole tangle a while back. People swore they'd seen Shanks in 2 places at once, which fed years of theories about there being 2 of him. The twin brother has explained some of that, tidily enough, but it's the sort of thing that lingers, because Shanks is a character the story keeps showing us from odd angles, half in shadow, saying things whose full meaning only lands chapters later. He knows things. He knew about Luffy's fruit and its true nature long before we did. He's the one whose crew had it in the first place, the one who arranged, in some quiet way, for it to reach the boy. Nothing about Shanks giving Luffy that hat and that fruit was an accident. He was placing a piece on a board he could see, and we couldn't. That's what makes him the friendliest mystery in the world, to me. He's not sinister. I don't think he's a villain in waiting. But he's the one major good guy whose true goal is still completely hidden, who operates on information nobody else has, who can move between the pirate world and the halls of the gods as if he belongs to both, because it turns out he does. The warmest man in the series is also the one keeping the most secrets, and he does it with such an easy smile that you almost don't notice you've been told nothing. He gave a child a hat and a future and a single instruction: become great and bring it back. That hat, by the way, is its own mystery, older than Shanks, older than Roger, older maybe than anyone realises. So let's talk about it. A simple straw hat, and the strange long journey it's been on. It's easy to forget the hat is a character. It's the thing the whole series is named around. In a sense, the Straw Hat crew, the Straw Hat himself, and it sits on Luffy's head in almost every panel, so familiar that you stop seeing it. But that hat has a history, and the more the story reveals about it, the less it looks like an ordinary piece of headwear, and the more it looks like the quietest important object in the world. The chain we can actually trace goes like this. Luffy got the hat from Shanks on the promise he'd return it once he'd made something of himself. Fine, but Shanks didn't own it first either. Go back further, and you find the hat on the head of the Pirate King himself. Roger wore it. In the flashbacks to Roger's youth, there it is, the same battered straw hat, and somewhere along the way it passed from Roger to Shanks, and then from Shanks to a small boy in a seaside village. So the object has been handed down, deliberately, across the three most important pirates of 3 generations. Roger to Shanks to Luffy. That's not a coincidence, and it's not sentiment. That's a torch being passed. The hat goes to whoever's meant to carry the dream next, which already makes it special. But the story went further and turned special into something closer to sacred. In one of those quiet moments Oda likes to slip in when you're not braced for it. In the Holy Land, at the very top of the world, there's a room the public never sees, a hidden chamber that holds a treasure the world government has kept secret for centuries. And in the scene where we glimpse the figure on the throne for the first time, the 800-year-old ruler brooding over the state of the world, we did not see that hidden chamber or its treasure with them. Luffy's wanted poster, held in their hands, considered. And nearby, kept as one of the most guarded objects in existence, an enormous straw hat, a giant one, far too big for any normal person. Sitting in a locked room, at the heart of the world's power, treated as a relic of the highest importance. Now put that together, the people who erased a century, who guard the deepest secret on Earth, keep a giant straw hat locked away as a national treasure. And a battered, ordinary-sized straw hat has been passed down, king to boy, as the mark of whoever carries the dream. 2 hats, one colossal and hidden, one small and worn, and out in the world, on the head of the one pirate the throne is personally worried about. The theory more or less writes itself, and I think it's almost certainly true. The straw hat is Nika's, or Joy Boy's, which as we discussed might be the same thing. The giant hat in the Holy Land is the original, the actual relic of the ancient warrior of liberation, the sun god, the first free man, preserved by the very people who defeated him because it's too important or too dangerous to let go of. And Luffy's hat is the successor, a smaller echo of that original, carried down through the generations to sit on the head of the person the legend was always waiting for. The government keeps the big one under lock and key at the summit of the world. The little one is bouncing around on a grinning idiot who has no idea he's wearing the symbol of the thing they fear most. There's a joke in that worthy of Roger's laugh, honestly. It reframes that first chapter moment completely, too. When Shanks put the hat on Luffy's head and told him to bring it back when he'd become a great pirate, we all read it as a sweet mentor gesture, a memento, a promise between friends. And it is that. But it might also be something much larger, an old will being deliberately handed to its next bearer, a piece of a 900-year-old story being slotted quietly into place. Shanks knew what Luffy's fruit was. It's very hard to believe Shanks didn't also know, at least a little, what the hat was. Which means that warm, simple scene at the start of everything might have been the single, most loaded moment in the series, disguised as a kindness. The passing of the torch, dressed up as a goodbye gift to a crying kid. We don't have the full confirmation. The government hasn't explained why they keep a giant hat as a treasure. Nobody spelled out the connection in plain words. But the story has laid the pieces so close together. The hat on Roger, the hat on Luffy, the giant hat at the top of the world, the sun god whose return the giants pray for, the fruit that turned out to be his, that the picture is nearly complete, even without the caption. It's one of those cases where Oda's trusting us to see it, and gently declining to insult us by saying it out loud. I find it a comforting sort of mystery, actually, because it's really a story about inheritance, which is the warmest theme in the whole series. Things get passed down. Wills, dreams, names, hats. One person carries something as far as they can and hands it to the next, and the object outlives them all, gathering meaning as it goes. That worn straw hat has been on the heads of a king, a legend, and a boy, and it might once have belonged to a man who died before any of them were born. It's held all their dreams in turn. And it's still going, still out on the sea, still heading for the end of the world, one head at a time. Let's stay gentle for a bit longer, because there's an old friend I promised we'd come back to. The largest and oldest living thing in the story, walking a slow circle around a grief it's carried for 1,000 years. Somewhere out on the seas right now, an elephant the size of a mountain is walking. It's been walking for about 1,000 years. It has a whole country living on its back, a tribe of people who make their homes in the fir and forests that grow along its spine, who've built towns on this creature, the way you'd build a village on a hill, most of them never really questioning that their home is alive and moving. The elephant is called Zunesha, and it's the largest living thing in the story, and quietly one of the saddest. Because Zunesha can't stop. That's the thing. It doesn't walk because it wants to. It walks because it has to. Long, long ago it committed some crime. We've never been told what. And as punishment, it was condemned to walk the seas for eternity. Never resting, never arriving anywhere. Just an endless slow circle across the endless water. It's forbidden to do anything of its own will. It can only follow orders, and for most of the last 1,000 years there's been no one to give them. So it simply walks and walks, carrying its little country in silence, waiting for a command that never comes. What was the crime? We don't know. And the not knowing is the whole ache of it. Imagine being punished so completely for so long that even the people living on your back have forgotten what you did, and there's no one left alive who remembers the trial or the sentence, or whether it was even fair. 1,000 years is long enough for the punishment to outlive the reason for it. Zunesha just keeps its head down and keeps moving, the way you do when the guilt is older than your memory of what caused it. One detail recolours the whole thing and ties this gentle giant back to the very start of our wandering tonight. Zunesha knew Joy Boy. Was his comrade in fact a friend, an ally, back in that erased century, 800 years ago and more? Which means the elephant isn't just serving out a random sentence. It was there. It was part of whatever happened during those 100 deleted years, stood beside the man who lost, and has been walking ever since, possibly as punishment for that very allegiance. And when Luffy's power fully awoke, and the rhythm of that ancient sun god's heartbeat rolled out across the sea, Zunesha lifted its head, because it recognized the beat. After 1,000 years of walking alone, the oldest friend of a dead man heard something in a young pirate that sounded like the friend coming home. I mentioned earlier that the elephant shares its strange spiral eyes with the figure on the throne, two of the oldest things in the world, on opposite sides of everything, marked the same way. Nobody's explained that either. It sits there, quietly enormous, like so much of the best of this series. Now let me connect Zunesha's slow walk to the biggest slow thing happening in the whole world, because they belong to the same quiet catastrophe. The world is sinking, not quickly, not in a way most people would notice in a single lifetime, but it's been established now, plainly, that the sea has been rising for centuries, and land has been going under, that there are whole continents submerged beneath the waves, drowned so long ago that people forgot they were ever there. And crucially, this isn't nature taking its course. It's a wound. It's the long, slow aftermath of those ancient weapons being used in the Great War, the damage done during the erased century, still spreading, still swallowing coastline 800 years on. The world we've been sailing through this whole time is already a flooded ruin of an older, larger one. The water's just not finished yet. And this is where all the threads we've touched tonight quietly braid together, which is my favourite thing about this series. How the sad old elephant and the crying mermaid princess and the dead first pirate all turn out to be part of one story. Joy Boy's broken promise, the one he apologised for in stone at the bottom of the sea, was about this, about the flood. There's an ancient ark called Noah, an enormous ship sitting unused beneath the ocean, built long ago and waiting. And the mermaid who can command the sea monsters, the gentle weapon we met earlier, is the one meant to move it. The idea, as best anyone can piece it together, is that one day when the waters rise too high, the sea kings will carry Noah, and Poseidon will guide them, and Joy Boy, or whoever inherits his role, will finally keep the promise the first one couldn't. A great rescue, planned 9 centuries ago, still waiting for its cast to assemble. That's the shape the ending seems to be curving toward if you stand back far enough. A drowning world, a promise older than any nation, a ship that's been waiting under the sea, and a scattered set of people, a mermaid, a pirate with a sun god's laugh, an elephant with a 1,000-year sentence, who don't yet know they're all part of the same 800-year-old plan to save everyone when the water finally comes. We don't know how it plays out. We don't know Zunesha's crime, or whether it'll ever be forgiven, or whether the flood is something to stop or something to survive. But there's something I find deeply peaceful about the scale of it. Everything in this series moves so fast, the fights, the jokes, the chaos, and underneath it all, at the bottom of everything, there's this: an elephant walking slowly across a slowly sinking world, carrying a home and a grief and a memory of a friend, patient beyond anything human, waiting for a rhythm it recognizes. The oldest, slowest, gentlest mystery in the whole story, and in no hurry at all to be solved. Before we wind down, let me gather up a few of the smaller loose threads, the ones that don't need a whole chapter, but are lovely to know, are still hanging there. For a character who's supposed to be the single, most dangerous man alive, Dragon is barely in the series. He turns up for a panel here, a shadowy scene there, says something cryptic, and vanishes again. And yet he holds one of the most important positions in the whole world, and he's tied by blood to the two people the story cares about most. He's Luffy's father. He's also the son of the old marine hero who raised Luffy. 3 generations of one family, a legendary marine, the world's most wanted revolutionary, and the boy who'll probably become Pirate King, and they've almost never been in a room together. That's a whole novel's worth of family drama that the series keeps in its back pocket and refuses to open. Dragon leads the revolutionary army, and where the government hunts pirates for chasing treasure, they fear Dragon for something far more threatening. He's not after riches, he's after them. His entire project is to bring down the world government and the so-called gods who sit above it. He doesn't want a piece of the world. He wants to tear out the rotten root of it and let something better grow, which makes him, in a sense, the most direct enemy the throne has. Not a rival for the treasure, but a man aiming straight at the lie the whole order is built on. The first time we saw him is still the best clue to what he might be. Right at the start of the series, in a town square, a young Luffy was about to be executed on a whim, and out of a clear sky came a sudden, violent wind, a storm from nowhere that scattered the whole scene and saved him. And there, in the chaos, stood Dragon, watching over the son he'd abandoned years before, wind whipping around him. Ever since, storms and strange weather have followed Dragon wherever he appears. It's led to the long-standing belief that he wields some power over wind or weather itself, an unconfirmed devil fruit, maybe, one that could level the natural order as easily as he wants to level the political one. But it's never been shown plainly. Like everything about Dragon, it's a shape in bad weather, glimpsed and gone. We did recently get the thing that made him make sense, though, the origin of his hatred. As a young man, before any of this, Dragon served as a marine, a soldier of the very government he now fights, and he was present at a terrible incident, an atrocity committed by the powerful against the helpless. Dressed up as sports, and he watched it happen from the inside. He saw what the world's rulers actually were when they thought no one was looking, and something in him broke, or rather set, hardened into the certainty that this order didn't deserve to stand. The man who will one day try to topple the world was made in a single afternoon of watching it be cruel. That's a very human origin for such a mythic figure, and I appreciate that Oda gave it to him. Dragon isn't a revolutionary, because of some grand ideology handed down to him. He's a revolutionary because he once stood in a uniform and was ashamed of it. The questions that remain are big and simple. What's his actual power? What's his actual plan? Because overthrow the government is a goal, not a method. And a man that patient surely has a method. How much does he know about the deepest secrets? The erased century, the thing on the throne? I'd wager a great deal, more than almost anyone outside the Holy Land. But we've never been let inside his head. And the personal one that quietly hangs over everything. Why did he leave Luffy behind? Hand the boy to his own father and disappear into his war. He's never explained it. He barely acknowledges it. There's a coldness to Dragon that the warmth of his son throws into sharp relief, and I don't think we understand it yet. And the army he's built is its own quiet puzzle. The Revolutionary Army isn't a mob, it's an organisation, spread in secrets across every corner of the world, with commanders who are monsters in their own right, and a reach that lets it topple governments and then vanish before anyone can trace the blow back home. Luffy's sworn brother sits near the top of it as Dragon's right hand, which pulls the family knot even tighter than it first looks. And yet for all that structure, we've almost never seen Dragon give an order, fight a battle, or lay out a plan. He moves his enormous machine from somewhere just off the page, and the story keeps his methods as hidden as his powers. Whatever he's building toward, a single decisive strike at the top of the world, a slow unpicking of the whole order, something none of us have guessed. He's been assembling it patiently for decades, in the dark, waiting for a moment. Only he seems to know is coming. He's the character the story is most deliberately saving, I think. Holding him back, keeping him to the margins, so that when he finally steps fully into the light, when father and son and the whole tangled family history collide against the backdrop of the final war, it'll land like a wave that's been building for 1,000 chapters. For now, he's a rumour of a storm on the horizon, which for a man who seems to command storms, feels about right. Speaking of things people can sense but not quite explain, there's a strange kind of hearing that only a rare few in this world possess, and it might be the key to the oldest voices of all. There's a power that isn't flashy, doesn't win fights, and might be the most important ability in the entire world. It's called the voice of all things. And what it means, near as we can tell, is that a very small handful of people can hear things that aren't supposed to speak. They can hear the voices of things, objects, creatures, the sea itself, the ancient stones. A person with this gift picks up something the rest of us are deaf to, a kind of communication running underneath the world all the time that almost nobody's tuned to. The Pirate King had it. When Roger sailed the seas, he could hear the enormous elephant we've been talking about, could hear the great sea monsters, could hold something like a conversation with the world around him that his crew could only watch, baffled. And Luffy has it too. Though he barely understands what he's doing, he's heard the elephant, heard the sea kings, picked up voices at odd moments, and thought nothing of it, because to him it's just a thing that happens sometimes. The reason this matters so enormously comes back to those indestructible ancient stones. Reading them the normal way takes a lifetime of study. The language is dead, the script is brutal, and only a bare few scholars in history have ever managed it. But there was a man, a legendary samurai from the land of the swords, who could read the stones without ever having learned the language at all. He simply heard them. He'd stand before one of these blocks, and the voice of it would tell him what it said, plain as anything, no study required. And that man sailed with Roger, and it's very likely that this uncanny hearing, split between a couple of gifted people, is how the Pirate King's crew managed to gather the true history and reach the final island when no one else in 800 years could. Not scholarship, listening. They didn't crack the code, they heard the code speak, which suggests something rather beautiful and strange about the world. that the truth was never really hidden, not fully, that the stones have been quietly saying their piece the whole time, out loud in a sense, and the tragedy is just that almost no one is born able to hear them. The government erased the century from the books, but it couldn't erase it from the voice of the stones. It could only make sure that the people who could listen were rare enough to control. Somewhere in there is a hint that this gift runs alongside the D, alongside the old bloodlines, alongside everyone who stands against the powerful. As if the world itself has a will, and it whispers to the ones who might set it free. While we're on powers that come down to willpower, I want to sit briefly with Haki, because it's the closest the series comes to magic, and it's never been fully explained. Haki is a kind of spiritual strength that everyone has in principle, but few can use. The ability to sense presence, to harden your will into a shield or a weapon, to feel the world around you with your eyes closed. Most of it's straightforward enough, but there's one type that isn't, and it's the interesting one. Conqueror's Haki, the Haki of Kings. Only a rare few possess it, and the story's very particular about who. It's said to appear only in those born with the disposition of a king, people with the temperament to stand above others, to lead, to bend the world to their will rather than be bent by it. You can't train your way into having it. You either carry that quality in you or you don't. And when someone with a strong enough will unleashes it, the weak simply fall unconscious around them, overwhelmed by a pressure that has nothing to do with muscle. The very strongest can wrap it around their fists, and when two great wills collide, the way the Pirate King once clashed with the strongest man in the world, the sky itself splits, and lightning cracks out of nowhere, the air unable to cope with two such forces meeting. And nobody's ever really explained the metaphysics of it. Why does willpower manifest as a physical force in this world? Why do some people carry the mark of a king and others don't? What's the actual connection between the strength of a person's spirit and the storm that answers when two spirits meet? The series treats will's sheer, stubborn force of wanting as one of the fundamental powers of its universe, as real and as physical as the sea or the sky. The dreams that became the devil fruits, the wills that got inherited down the D bloodline, the voice that speaks through the ancient stones, the pressure a king's spirit puts on the air, they all seem to be facets of the same idea. That in this world, what you want badly enough is a force with weight. It can knock people down. It can crack the heavens. It can outlive your body by 800 years. I don't know if we'll ever get a tidy explanation, and I'm not sure I want one. There's something right about a pirate adventure deciding, at its deepest level, that the strongest thing in the world isn't a weapon or a power or a throne. It's a person who wants something and won't stop. That's the physics of the whole series, really, dressed up as a superpower. Right, let's gather the last few loose ends before we let the night close in. Let's talk about the cook for a bit, because Sanji's mystery is really two mysteries stacked on top of each other. One soft and dreamy, one a bit unsettling, and they've started to press against each other in a way I find quietly gripping. The soft one is his dream, and it's the gentlest ambition in the whole crew. Every one of them wants something enormous to be the Pirate King, the world's greatest swordsman, to map the whole world. Sanji just wants to find the All Blue. The All Blue, a legendary sea, spoken of like a fairy tale, where the fish of all four of the world's oceans somehow gather in one place. For a chef, it would be paradise. Every ingredient in the world swimming in a single sea. Most people think it doesn't exist. Sanji has staked his life on it. And there's a lovely theory that the All Blue isn't a place you sail to at all, but a thing that will come to be. That when the great wall dividing the world's seas is one day broken, when the map is redrawn by whatever ends this era, the four seas will flow together, and the All Blue will simply appear, which would mean Sanji's daft cook's dream and the fate of the entire world are secretly the same event. He just wants to find the All Blue. He might get his wish the day the world changes forever. Now the unsettling one. Now the Sanji ran away from home, and for a long time we didn't know what home was. It turns out he's a prince, a son of the Vinsmoke family, who rule a floating military kingdom, a nation of soldiers for hire built entirely around science and war. And his father was a man who decided that emotions were a weakness in a soldier. So he experimented on his own children before they were born, engineering Sanji's brothers into cold, tough, feelings-free super soldiers with enhanced bodies and no capacity for mercy. Living weapons wearing the faces of his sons, Sanji was meant to be one of them. And the thing that saved him, the thing that made him the person we love, is that his modifications seemed to fail. The engineering that stripped his brothers of their hearts didn't take with him. He grew up able to feel, able to love, able to weep at a sad story, and cook for a starving enemy, which in that cold family made him a defective embarrassment they locked away and tried to forget. His humanity was, by his father's design, a malfunction. I think that's one of the most quietly heartbreaking backstories in the series, a boy treated as broken precisely because he turned out kind. And the family he ran from is a mystery in its own right, bigger than one cruel father. Gyurma isn't just a military outfit, it's the last remnant of what was once a proper kingdom, a nation of science that legend says held real power in the world a couple of centuries back, before it fell from grace and became the wandering army for hire it is now. There's a whole lost history buried in there. How a science kingdom rose that far, what it built, why it fell, and how much of its old knowledge still sits locked away in the family's labs. Sanji's father clings to the dream of restoring that former glory, and his engineered children were meant to be the weapons that did it, which makes the son who came out kind of defective piece of a plan to rebuild an empire. The raid suits, the cloning tanks, the hidden science that produced him, they all hint at a family that remembers things about the world's past most kingdoms have long forgotten. He didn't just run from a bad home, he ran from a whole buried history. This is where the two threads collide, and where the open mystery lives. In recent stretches of the story, Sanji's body has started doing things it shouldn't. The enhancements that supposedly failed, the inhuman durability, the strength, the strange resilience his brothers were built with, have begun surfacing in him, flickering to life in the middle of desperate fights. His body's been changing, hardening, showing signs of the very engineering everyone thought never took. Which raises a genuinely tense question. Did the modifications actually fail? Or were they simply asleep, waking up now, years late? And if they're waking, the deeper fear underneath it, will they change who he is? Will the coldness that came bundled with the strength start to surface too? Sanji himself is terrified of exactly this. He'd rather stay weak and human than become strong and lose his heart. And he said as much. The tension the story's set up is whether he can have the power without paying his brother's price. We don't have the answer. We don't know the full extent of what his body's becoming, or whether his father's design has a last surprise buried in it. We don't know where the all blue is, or whether it's a place or a promise. But I like that both of Sanji's mysteries come down to the same quiet fear that runs under his whole character, the fear of losing his humanity, whether to a father's cruelty or to his own changing body, and the dream of a peaceful sea full of fish sitting on the far side of all that violence, waiting for a world gentle enough to hold it. There. Let me sweep up the very last handful of loose threads, the small ones I can never quite stop thinking about. Some mysteries don't need a whole chapter. They're smaller, quieter, the sort of thing you notice and then can't unnotice, and they've been sitting patiently in the background for years while the big stuff plays out. Let me run through a few of them, because I've got a soft spot for the little dangling threads, almost as much as the world-ending ones. Take Nami, the crew's navigator. We know her adopted story well. She was raised by a kind former marine woman, who found her as a baby and took her in. But the thing the series has never explained is this. Where did that baby come from? She was found on a battlefield, an infant, alone, in the middle of a war, scooped up by a passing soldier who decided to keep her rather than leave her. And that's it. No parents, no name, no explanation of how a newborn ended up in a war zone. For most characters, you'd shrug and move on, but Nami's picked up a couple of odd details over the years that keep the question alive. She has an almost supernatural feel for the weather. She can sense a change in the sky before any instrument can, read the sea like a language, and at one point she was able to command a creature made of pure storm and lightning, a being that had belonged to one of the most powerful pirates in the world, that simply decided it liked her better. Little things, but they fed a long-running suspicion that Nami's ordinary orphan origins might not be so ordinary, that there's a heritage in her nobody's uncovered yet, tucked away behind the girl who just wanted to draw a map of the world. Maybe it's nothing, but you don't leave a baby on a battlefield in a story this careful without a reason. Then there's Zorro, which is a lovely one because it connects two arcs separated by hundreds of chapters. Very early on, in a spooky graveyard of an island, the crew fought a zombie, the reanimated corpse of a legendary swordsman from long ago, a samurai so skilled that even dead and shambling, he was one of the toughest opponents they'd faced. That samurai came from the isolated land of the swords, and he was a genuine national hero there, a figure out of that country's proudest legends. Now Zorro looks like him, not vaguely, strikingly, and when the crew finally reached that isolated land themselves, much later, the resemblance stopped feeling like a coincidence because Zorro's own background kept brushing up against the place. His childhood swordsmanship teacher carried a name from one of that land's samurai clans. His own family name is unusual, foreign, out of place where he grew up. The strong implication, never quite stated outright, is that Zorro is descended from that land's warriors, that somewhere back up his family line, one of those samurai left the closed country, and generations later produced a green-haired swordsman chasing the title of the world's greatest. Without even knowing, he was carrying an old bloodline of legends. Zorro's never seemed to care in the slightest, which is very Zorro. He'd probably fall asleep if you tried to explain it to him, but it's there, waiting, one of those quiet inheritances the series loves. There's one that nags at me more than most, and it's the most frustrating cliffhanger in recent memory. When the world's greatest scientist made his final broadcast, the one that dumped more truth on the world in a few chapters than the previous 800 years combined, it got cut off. Right at the end, he'd worked through the history, the ancient kingdom, the war, the whole shape of it, and then he turned to address a specific group directly, the people scattered across the world who carry that mysterious letter in their names. He started to tell them something about what the name actually means, about what's inside them, some inheritance or truth or purpose that had been waiting in 8 centuries to be spoken aloud to the very people it belonged to, and the transmission died. The machine carrying his voice was knocked out mid-sentence, and the single most important thing he had to say, the answer to the oldest small mystery in the series, delivered at last, was lost in static. We got fragments, half-words, that name, but actually nothing of the sort. A will passed down through the years, and then nothing. He was this close to just telling us, and the story snatched it away at the last possible instant. Maddening. Perfect in its way, but maddening. And finally, the destination itself. The final island. Everything in the series points toward it. The whole voyage, the whole treasure, the whole dream, all aimed at one island at the very end of the world's most dangerous sea. And the strange thing is, we don't even know its real name. The name everyone uses, Laugh Tale, is just the name the pirate king gave it as a joke when he arrived. That's not its true name. Its true name is presumably written somewhere, waiting along with everything else. To reach it, you need to gather the readings from 4 particular red stones, hidden in the most dangerous corners of the world, which together point like the arms of a compass to that single spot no one else has reached in 800 years. 3 of those 4 have been found and read. The 4th, the last one, the final piece of the map, has still not been located. It's out there, somewhere, holding the last bearing to the end of everything. And until someone finds it, the final island stays exactly where it's been the whole time. Just past the edge of the known, real, confirmed, and completely out of reach. I love that we're this far into the story, and the destination is still technically unfound. The crew's closer than anyone's been in a generation, but the last stone's still hidden, the true name's still unspoken, and the island at the end of the world is still keeping its own counsel, the way it has since a laughing king sailed away and told no one what he saw. And that feels like the right place to start winding down. Something took me embarrassingly long to find strange here, because it's so baked into the setting that you stop questioning it. The shape of the world in One Piece makes no sense. And I mean that as a compliment. It makes no sense in a way that's clearly deliberate, a way that's practically begging you to ask who did this. Picture the world. There's an enormous wall, a continent stretched thin, a mountain range so vast it wraps right around the entire globe in one direction, top to bottom, a single unbroken band of land circling the whole planet. That's the red line, and cutting across it at right angles runs a belt of sea called the Grand Line, the world's most dangerous ocean, the one every serious pirate has to cross. So you've got a ring of land and a ring of sea, crossing each other like the seams on a ball, and between them they carve the world's oceans into 4 separate seas that barely connect, north, east, west, and south, each walled off from the others. Now, a wall that circles an entire planet is not a thing nature does. Rivers meander, coastlines wander, mountains clump up where continents crash together. Nothing in nature draws a clean line all the way around a world. And yet there it is, this impossibly tidy, impossibly total barrier, dividing everything. The more you look at it, the more it looks less like geography and more like architecture, like something that was put there on purpose by someone. That's the theory, and I think it's very likely true, that the red line is artificial, that at some point, and you can probably guess which point, it's always the same 100 years. Someone with world-shaping power raised that wall, or the world was reshaped into this divided form as a deliberate act. Whether it was built to protect something or to trap something, or simply to carve the world up so it could be controlled in pieces, we don't know. But the ancient weapons we talked about can level islands, and apparently even threaten the entire world itself. A power like that, used deliberately, could absolutely draw a line around a world. The divided globe we've been sailing this whole time might itself be the single largest piece of evidence for what those weapons did during the war. And sitting right at the crossing point, where the ring of land meets the ring of sea, the exact centre of everything, the highest place in the world, is the Holy Land, the seat of the gods, the throne we keep coming back to. Whoever built the wall, or whoever seized it afterward, planted themselves at the precise intersection of the whole world and has ruled from that spot ever since, physically above everyone, at the one point where all the world's divisions meet. That's not an accident of real estate. That's someone who understood that if you control the crossing point of a divided world, you control the world. Directly beneath them, at the very bottom of that same wall, deep under the sea, sits the Fish People's Island, a whole civilization living in the dark under the weight of the Holy Land, as far below the gods as it's possible to be. The geography is a diagram of the power structure, The high sight at the top of the wall in the light, and the ones they look down on live at the bottom of it in the dark. Even the map is telling you who's in charge, and the ceiling goes further than the wall. Running alongside that ring of dangerous sea on either side are two dead bands of ocean called the calm belts, stretches where the wind never blows and the currents never move, so an ordinary ship simply sits there, becalmed, going nowhere. Worse, they're the breeding grounds of the largest sea monsters in the world, so the still water is also the deadliest. Between the unbreakable wall of the Red Line and those two lifeless moats of Calm Belt, the world's most important sea is boxed off almost completely. You can only reach it by threading a single narrow entrance, or by travelling beneath the Red Line itself. Stand back, and the whole design looks less like a world that grew, and more like a world that was built to be controlled. One wall around the middle, two dead seas guarding the only path through, the rulers planted at the Soul Crossing, and a sunken kingdom with an ancient waiting ship stacked in the dark directly below them. Everything funnels through the spot where they sit. This is the part that loops all the way back to the cook and his fishing spot. If the Red Line is artificial, if it was raised, then it could, in principle, come down. And the day that wall falls, the day the four seas are no longer held apart, they'd flow together into one. Every ocean, one water, which is, word for word, the description of that legendary sea Sanji spent his life chasing. So the whole world's geography, the division, and the wall, and the four separate seas, might be a temporary state. A wound like the sinking, waiting to be healed. And the healing of it, the wall coming down, the seas merging, the world made whole again, might be exactly the kind of thing that ends an era. The sort of world-changing event Whitebeard, a dying legend, meant when he said the great treasure would turn everything upside down. I find it wonderful that the setting itself is a clue. Most stories put the mystery in the plot and let the map just be the map. One Piece hid one of its biggest secrets in the literal shape of the globe, in a wall so obvious and so total that you sail past it 100 times before it occurs to you to ask why it's there at all. The answer's tied to everything else: the weapons, the war, the century, the gods on their mountain, the drowning world, the cook's impossible sea. It's all one shape. You just have to step back far enough to see the whole ball at once. And there's one last piece of that whole shape worth sitting with before we let the night take over. The handful of ancient enforcers who've been quietly holding the whole thing up. For most of the series, the 5 elders were as high as you could see. 5 ancient men in robes, sitting in a dim room at the top of the world, running the whole world government between them. The final authority. The ones every admiral and every king ultimately answered to. They looked the part too. Stern, grey, unhurried, the sort of old men who've held power so long they've stopped raising their voices because they've never once needed to. We took them, for a long time, as the ceiling, the top of the pyramid. They aren't, of course. We now know they bow to the figure on the throne, same as everyone. But learning that didn't make them less interesting. It made them more, because it turned out these 5 old men were hiding something far stranger than a boss upstairs. They were hiding what they actually are, because in the recent stretch of the story, on the scientist's island, the 5 elders did something none of us were ready for. They stopped being old men, they transformed. Each one of them turned into a monster, enormous demonic shapes, each different, each drawn straight out of old myth and folklore. One became a great horned beast, one a spider-limbed horror, one a towering deity-like figure, each a different nightmare, all of them vast and wrong and ancient-looking in a way that had nothing to do with the frail bureaucrats we thought we knew. Mythical Zoan powers, the rarest kind, the sort that let a person become a legend made flesh. The men who run the world are not men. They're the demons the world's oldest stories warned about, wearing robes and holding meetings. And the eerie part, the bit that lingers, is that you can't seem to kill them. During that clash, they took wounds that would end anyone, run through, struck down, damage that should have been final, and they simply put themselves back together. Reformed, stood up, carried on as if nothing had happened, patient and unbothered, the way something that has stopped fearing death behaves, whether it's true immortality or just regeneration so complete it amounts to the same thing. Nobody can say. But the impression the story leaves is unmistakable. These 5 have been around a very, very long time, and they don't intend to stop, which raises the question that's now hanging over them. How long exactly? Because if they were around at the founding, if these are the same 5 who helped build the world order 8 centuries ago, and have simply never left their posts, then they're of a kind with the thing on the throne. Ancient survivors of the erased century, still enforcing the world they made, still guarding the whole where the truth used to be, having outlived every generation that might have questioned them. Immortal or near enough, monstrous underneath, and utterly loyal to the ruler they kneel to. That's a far more frightening top of the world than 5 tired old politicians. It means the people in charge aren't a lineage that inherits power down the years. They're the same individuals, the same handful of monsters who've held the reins without interruption since the beginning, and mean to hold them forever. There's a lovely detail buried in their names that I can't help pointing at, because it rhymes with something we've already touched. The ancient weapons, remember, are named after gods: the sea, the sky, the underworld. And the 5 elders are named after the planets. Each of them carries the name of a heavenly body, a world circling in the dark. Set those 2 facts next to each other, and it starts to feel deliberate, as if the whole top of this world is themed around the heavens, gods and planets and celestial things, a ruling class that named itself after the sky it decided it belonged to. It fits the celestial dragons, doesn't it? The self-styled gods living at the peak of the world, surrounding themselves with the names of the cosmos, looking down on everyone below as if from orbit. The naming isn't decoration, it's a world view. These are people who genuinely think of themselves as belonging to the heavens rather than the earth, and they've built 800 years of names to keep reminding themselves of it. What we still don't have is the core of them. What they truly are underneath the transformations, whether they were born monsters or became them, or made some bargain long ago that traded their humanity for the endurance to rule forever. How they don't die. What each of them governs and guards because their roles are divided up between them, like domains of a pantheon. One holding science, one holding justice, one holding the natural world, as if between the 5 of them they carved up reality itself. And the oldest question, the same one that follows the figure on the throne, what are they so afraid of that they become demons and refuse to die just to keep it buried? Whatever's down in that hole in history, these 5 have staked their humanity and possibly their souls on making sure it never climbs back out. They're a good note to end the tour on, I think, because they're the perfect example of what this whole series does best. Something that sits in plain sight for years, ordinary and easy to overlook. 5 old men in a quiet room, and then, when you least expect it, opens up to reveal something ancient and enormous and strange that changes how you read everything that came before. The world's been run by monsters the whole time. We just weren't shown their real faces until now, and I suspect that's still not the last mask this story has to pull off. And on that note, let's step all the way back and let the night take it from here. So that's the wonder. That's most of the big ones, and a good few of the small ones. Laid out end to end, the way they've been rattling around my head for years. It's a strange thing to sit with, once you've gathered them all in one place like this. Because taken one at a time, each of these is just a fun puzzle. Who's Joy Boy? What's the treasure? Why does that man have 2 powers he shouldn't? But laid side by side, they stop being separate puzzles and start looking like one enormous thing, seen from a lot of different angles. The erased century. That's really the whole of it, isn't it? Everything we've talked about tonight is a shadow thrown by those 100 missing years. The treasure is the truth about them. The stones are the record of them. The weapons are the wreckage from them. The wall around the world is the scar of them. The thing on the throne is a survivor of them, and the man who lost was killed at the end of them. And the letter hidden in the certain names is the mark of the people who've spent all the centuries since refusing to let them stay buried. Pull any thread and you end up in the same 100 years. It's all one hole in the middle of history, and the entire series is the slow, patient work of climbing down into it. I think that's why it holds together the way it does for all its daftness. On the surface, it's a rubber man in a straw hat punching people and laughing. Underneath, it's about a truth so dangerous that the people who own the world burned a century to hide it, and a long, scattered, stubborn line of people who keep trying to dig it back up. Generation after generation, passing the job down like an heirloom. The pirate and the elephant and the crying mermaid and the dead first pirate and the 800-year-old ruler are all in the end arguing about the same thing. What really happened, and whether the world we've got now was worth the lie it was built on. What gets me, sitting here at the end of it, is how much of this the story has actually started to answer lately. When I first fell into these mysteries, most of them were pure darkness. No name for the ruler, no shape for the lost kingdom, no idea what Joy Boy was or why the world was sinking or where the powers came from. And now, in the final stretch of the tale, a lot of that darkness has thinned into shape. We've got a name on the throne. We've got the bones of the ancient war. We know the sun god legend points to Nika, but we still don't fully understand what it means or whose laugh it really is. The great scientist told us more in a handful of chapters than the previous decades managed combined. The series is in its last act now, sailing hard toward that final island, and you can feel it deciding which of its secrets to finally hand over. But not all of them. That's the part I've made my peace with, and the part I find, honestly, quite comforting on a night like this. Some of these will get their answer soon. The last stone will be found. The true name of the island will be spoken. The treasure will finally sit there on the page for all of us to see. And some of them, I suspect, never will. The giant shapes in the fog. The elephant's ancient crime. What the great scientist was about to say in the second before the signal died. The exact thing a laughing king saw at the end of the world. There are mysteries in this series that I think Oda has always meant to leave a little open, not out of stinginess, but because some things are better as a shape in the mist than as a fact on a page. The moment you see the treasure, it stops being every treasure and becomes just one. There's a kind of generosity in leaving a few doors closed, and that's a nice thing to carry off to sleep, I reckon. That not everything needs solving. That you can spend years loving a question without ever needing it answered. And the loving is the point, not the answer. The elephant's been walking for 800 years, and it's in no hurry to arrive anywhere. The stones have been keeping their secrets for 8 centuries, and they'll keep them a while longer. The island at the end of the world has waited this long, patient and quiet, past the edge of the map, and it doesn't mind waiting a bit more. I don't really know how any of it ends. Nobody does yet. Maybe the treasure is a mountain of gold after all, and Roger laughed because it was so much simpler than everyone feared. Maybe it's the whole true history, and the world does turn upside down, and the wall comes down, and the seas run together, and a cook finally finds his impossible fishing spot on the far side of everything. Maybe the elephant is forgiven. Maybe the dead first pirate's apology finally gets answered by the boy wearing his hat. Maybe the thing on the throne, 800 years old and clutching a portrait of a woman who walked away, gets to be understood at last, even a little. I hope so. I've grown oddly fond of nearly everyone in this, even the monsters, especially the monsters maybe. They've been carrying their sad old secrets a long time. For now though, none of it's decided. For now, it's all still possible. all still open, the whole enormous thing hanging there, unfinished and alive, which, I keep coming back to this, is a better state for a story to be in than any ending could manage. The best part of a mystery is the part before you know, and we're still in that part. We might be in it for a good while yet. So there's no tidy bow to put on this. No grand conclusion, because the story hasn't got one yet either. There's just an ocean, and a slowly sinking world, and 100 years missing from the middle of everything, and a scattered handful of stubborn people sailing toward the truth with a laugh on their faces and a letter in their names. And an old friend, the size of a mountain, walking its slow circle, listening for a heartbeat it recognises. That's plenty to drift off on, I think. The questions will still be here in the morning. They've been here for 800 years. They can wait one more night. Rest easy. Mind how you go. And if you dream of anything tonight, I hope it's a warm one. An island past the edge of the map. A treasure nobody's opened yet. And the sound of someone, somewhere out on the water, laughing at a joke you haven't heard the end of. Good night.